I'm Joshua Hayward, and thanks for joining me for life readings this week in the stars and cards. And let me extend an invitation to you to join me each week as I explore all the possibilities and the challenges and the opportunities for inward growth and outward effectiveness. And this is brought to you by Breath of Life School in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and many blessings. Enjoy. There's the big picture, and then there is also the little picture. That's how it is, right? There's the big picture of how you see yourself, where you're going. There's this big picture of your life. There's the story of your life. And then there's the small picture, which is you in the moment that you're in, dealing with the things that you're in, dealing with the circumstances of your life and the people of your life and the details as you're moving through it. So there's you right there with what you're doing, and then there's the big you where you're going. All right? So those, the big story, the little story, if you want to look at it that way. And then there's the you, and then there's the family, and the people that you're around, and that contained, smaller community as being part of the country or part of the world or part of the universe. It's a big place where we live. They say it's a small world. I don't know. I guess it's a matter of perspective. But to me, there's a big world and there's a small world. And that's the theme for this week here, beginning on October 17th, Sunday. And so that's the content for life readings this week in the stars and cards. Is maybe a formulation of the big picture and the little picture wanting to work together a little bit. The little picture has so much to do with the ego and what the ego is doing with the circumstances and working its way through the details. And then the bigger picture is more of a soul picture of who you are. So there's you going through your life, trying to work things out, trying to grow, trying to become more conscious, trying to achieve more. I would suggest trying to be more of who you are. That's more important than what you achieve. We define ourselves by our achievements way too much. But that's another whole story, isn't it? Okay, so big story, little story. And as we move to Monday, the 18th of October, here 2021, starting to wrap up that year. The year that we wished was going to be better than 2020. Well, I guess it's a matter of how you envision that, whether that's actually true or not. But in the small picture, moving into the big picture, this week, especially as you move into the beginning of the week here on the 18th, Jupiter stationing in the sign of Aquarius and Mercury stationing in the sign of Libra. Mercury represents more the small picture of how we think about things and how we engage in the details of our lives, how we think about putting things together. And Jupiter is the bigger picture, the philosophy of who we are and how we want to expand, and how we want to get more soul consciousness, how we want to achieve a more fullness or a wholeness of who we are. Okay, so Jupiter in the sign of Aquarius, Mercury in the sign of Libra. And this has to do with connections with people mostly, our relationships, not only with circumstances, but with people. The people that are very close to us with Libra, and also the friends with Jupiter and Aquarius. and possibilities that are there. So those are being energized, and they're in air signs. So don't be afraid to communicate. Don't be afraid to think out loud. But it's got to do with conceptualizing as well as anything else. And getting yourself ready to move, because I'm telling you, as we enter this, moving through the fall and into the winter and into January, I've mentioned this several times, this is a very intense, earth-changing, planet-changing time that we're moving into. And so there's an upbeat feeling of like, yeah, what's possible here? Where are my connections? Who am I? And you should be able to do it pretty nicely. We've already passed the stationing of Pluto and Saturn. Now Jupiter, Mercury, much more upbeat. And by the way, this has been a really intense Mercury retrograde. So, wow, getting out of that's going to be kind of cool too. I know you're shaking your head up, and you're nodding up and down. Yes, it's true. But I guess it's been necessary, kind of shake things loose a little bit. It usually is. But we have a full moon on Wednesday the 20th, and this is going to be in Aries, and the Sun and Mars being in Libra. And then, of course, the moon being in Aries, and it's at 27 degrees. And I mention this for a couple of reasons, but let's just start here. That here's the Sun and Mars, okay, over here in Libra, conjunct, and then we've got the moon over here in Aries. And Mars is kind of an Aries type of planet. It's a little bit assertive and very masculine, aggressive, or that kind of thing. And so the moon is in that sign of Aries that Mars really loves so much. So that's intense, but it's on a T-square to Pluto. Pretty tight T-square to Pluto. So that day of Wednesday, I think the full moon happens around 11 in the morning. So this is a week of change that's happening, being uplifted and then pulled into some intensity here. The moon in Aries sort of calls up the whole idea that Chiron is in the sign of Aries too, and it has to cross over that the day before in conjunct Chiron and at 9 degrees, and then move it up into all the way to 27 degrees. And so let me translate that. This is very intense because Pluto, that square to Pluto, makes it very evolution oriented. We just came out of that Pluto station. If you've been following this show, if you've been following my channel here, we just met Pluto a couple of weeks ago here in a pretty intense way. So here's Pluto coming out of that station and squaring this thing. So it really, this moon in Aries and Libra and Mars Sun, and just the Mars on the square to Pluto, very tight, almost within a couple of degrees there as this happens. That's a lot of forces coming into play. I'm going to predict that this week, for this country and maybe for the world, there's just a slight tick of something intense that's going to be going on. I'm of the opinion that we're in a civil war, and that, okay, there he goes again, there goes Joshua again. And this is going to be another step about either moving more into that or clarifying things and maybe avoiding that whole thing. Who knows how things are actually going to happen, but this is a lot of conflict going on here. This might cause conflict between people, between friends. I see a lot of endings and I see some beginnings. I think that possibilities are very sky high. If we can move into a better connection with the microcosm and the macrocosm, in other words, as who we are in the small picture, and we can really see who we are and become more soul-driven, the opportunities become more and more vast. In other words, you know, like that, you could really fall off a cliff if you're going off the wrong way, but then the opposite of, I don't know what the opposite of falling off a cliff might be, but it might just being embraced in an oasis of kindness. So it's up to you what you want to do with your life. And now we're going to go into the cards and to see how to respond to that. And the first card is the Knight of Swords, and this card indicates very excellently going after, seeing what you see, and being willing, you know, to embrace this guy who will go with a high degree of excellence towards what he's creating, what he wants to experience. So here's the Martian, you know, aspect of this, you know, but learning how to use this energy so no harm is done. Okay. Second card. And this card's called Success. He was the Knight of Swords. This is the Six of Discs, or the Six of Earth. And this means aligning on the inner with what's actually really going to work on the earth plane. It's that earth card here. So the moon is in Taurus in this particular card, which means really moving into a balanced emotional and personal state in order to achieve some pretty good results, inner and outer, but definitely outer too. So this can be a week where focused energies can bring you closer to successful conclusions. The next card is going to be the Sun. And keeping in mind here that a lot of things are possible. You know, a lot of things have been muddied up, but let's get clear this week with these astrological changes and bring out all the possibilities that are there. This Sun represents a balance between the Mercury and Jupiter. And by the way, Mercury and Jupiter, since Mercury's been retrograding, it's going in and out of a trine, which is a real positive dynamic angle to Jupiter. So they really, as they station, they're beginning to move into that harmonious trine once again. And it's been there before, and it's moving towards that again. That's the way the retrogrades work. Anyway, the next card is going to be, well, here's the macrocosm, here's the big picture, the world, the universe. Okay, so the Sun, the universe, many, many things possible. The world you know is needing to shift and evolve and change into something that's more aligned with you and your small picture and your big picture. You could see in this card the beauty. And Saturn actually rules this card too, so it's the manifestation of all those karmic possibilities. Some are ending. If you can really move into some epiphanies, if you can really let go of the past, I think forgiveness has a lot to do with it. It's hard to succeed if you're holding on to victimhood. I'm going to go with the next card here, and that would be the victimhood of the oppressive outer world. Oppression here, the Ten of Wands. Okay, and this is where all that stuff, this is kind of like the warning here. This is that, there's, in these sessions that we're doing on the channel, a lot of a lot of these, with 6 card spreads here, have so much to do with, there's always, well, not always, but so often that warning card or that thing that says, here's what the issue is. And we feel oppressed by society. But don't let the heaviness of the bigger picture screw with your little picture so you can't move into the fullness and wholeness of your life. And so this week, with your friends, with your family, with yourself, adjustment is the sort of the send-off card that we have going on here. It's being able to see how to make changes without not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, as the cliche has it. This is adjusting to that alignment that I was talking about that in the last week's session. The 3 of Wands, or alignment, appropriateness, was so important. And also in this card, there's the Hebrew letter, and by the way, a couple of things here. Libra, I know you can't see that too well from this camera angle, but Libra rules this card. It's formally called justice, and the scales of justice, okay, bringing things into harmony. There's, but Lamed being the Hebrew mystical letter there, it has to do with penetration into learning as you're growing and making adjustments and changing, okay? And that's what's upon us with our relationship. So we're working on adjustment to, fine-tuning and making those changes to bring things into focus. Back in the old days, before cable and before satellite and all that stuff, your TV used to have an adjustment that would fine-tune the picture, because you would be working with a radio signal, okay, or that type of signal. So you're pulling that in, you fine-tune it and adjustment. I know you young people out there aren't used to that, but I know you've heard the expression fine-tune. And so that's what it is. It's growing and learning and connecting more the small picture and the big picture. Okay, so that's what this week's about. And as you're doing that, if you're seeking the divine in all things, if you're looking for the divine in that process, that is that harmony to which I'm referring.